Growing up, my brother was the golden child. Perfect grades, star athlete, the kind of guy who could charm anyone with a smile. He was the pride of our family, the one our parents bragged about at every dinner party. Meanwhile, I was the black sheep, struggling in school, always in trouble, and constantly compared to him. No matter how hard I tried, I could never measure up. It wasn't just that he was successful. It was the way everyone treated him like he could do no wrong. If he got into a fight at school, it was because someone had provoked him. If I got into a fight, it was because I was out of control. The double standard was exhausting, and over time, I stopped trying to compete. I accepted my role as the family disappointment. Fast forward to adulthood, and nothing had changed. My brother was a successful lawyer, living in a penthouse downtown, while I was barely scraping by, working odd jobs and trying to figure out my life. But I was okay with that. I had my own path, my own pace. I didn't need his approval or anyone else's. Then, one day, I found out my brother had hired a private investigator to follow me. At first, I couldn't believe it. Why would he care enough to spy on me? But when I confronted him, he didn't deny it. In fact, he smirked. "I just want to make sure you're not embarrassing the family," he said. "You've always been a liability, and I need to know if you're going to drag us down with you." I was furious, but instead of lashing out, I decided to play along. If he wanted to see my life, fine, let him see it all. What he didn't know was that my odd jobs weren't just random gigs. I had been working undercover for a nonprofit that helped victims of human trafficking. My failure of a life was actually a carefully constructed cover to protect my real work. The investigator followed me for weeks, documenting everything. But instead of finding dirt, he stumbled onto something far more shocking. One night, I was meeting with a source in a dimly lit cafe when the investigator burst in, waving a folder of photos. "Do you know what your brother is really up to?" he demanded. I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" He slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos of my brother meeting with shady figures, documents with incriminating details, and evidence that he was involved in a massive corruption scandal. Turns out, my golden brother wasn't so golden after all. He had been using his law firm to cover up illegal activities for powerful clients, money laundering, bribery, even human trafficking. I couldn't believe it. My brother, the perfect one, was a criminal. The investigator looked at me, his expression serious. "I thought I was hired to expose you, but it looks like your brother is the one with something to hide." I didn't know what to do. Should I confront my brother? Go to the authorities? Or use this information to finally prove I wasn't the failure he always thought I was? But before I could decide, I got a call from an unknown number. "Stop digging," a voice said, "or you'll regret it." The call ended abruptly, leaving me frozen in place. My hands trembled as I stared at the phone. Who was watching me? And how did they know what I was doing? The investigator noticed my panic. "What's wrong?" I showed him the call log. "They know," I whispered. "They know I'm looking into this." He frowned, his expression darkening. "This is bigger than I thought. If your brother's involved in what I think he is, you're in danger." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Danger? From my own brother? The investigator leaned closer, his voice low. "Listen, I didn't sign up for this. I was hired to follow you, not get mixed up in some criminal conspiracy. But if what we've found is true, you need to be careful. These people don't play around." I nodded, my mind racing. What had I gotten myself into? Over the next few days, I tried to go about my life as normal, but the threats kept coming. Anonymous texts, strange cars following me, even a package left on my doorstep with a single word scrawled on it: "Stop." I knew I couldn't ignore this. My brother's crimes were too big, too dangerous. But going after him meant risking everything. My safety, my family, even my life. One night, as I was leaving my apartment, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The engine was running, and the windows were tinted. I froze, my heart pounding. Were they watching me? Before I could react, the SUV sped off into the night. But I knew this wasn't over. The next day, I received another package. This time, it was a photograph, a picture of me, taken from a distance, with a red X drawn over my face. My hands trembled as I held the photo. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a promise. I called the investigator, my voice shaking. They're not going to stop, are they? He was silent for a moment before responding. No, they're not. But neither are we. I knew I couldn't outrun this forever. If my brother's criminal empire ran as deep as I suspected, simply exposing him wouldn't be enough. He was too powerful, too well-connected. One wrong move, and I'd end up either dead or locked away for something I didn't do. I needed a strategy, something smart, something that would force him into a corner before he even saw the walls closing in. I met with the investigator in a secure location, a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place no one asked questions and the cameras hadn't worked in years. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of cigarette smoke and mildew, but it was safe. We sat across from each other, the tension between us heavy. Neither of us spoke for a moment, both fully aware of the risk we were taking. Then, he reached into his bag and slid an envelope across the table. "They're watching you closely," he said, his voice low and grim. "And now, they're watching me too." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were photos, grainy, but clear enough to send a chill down my spine. There I was, in various places, my apartment, the cafe where I met the investigator, even the grocery store. Someone had been tracking me, logging my movements. Then I saw the second set of photos. Him, the investigator. Different locations, same disturbing pattern. "They're covering their tracks," he continued, his expression tight. "Your brother is smart. He's not going to take the risk of exposure lightly. This is their way of warning us. If we push too hard, we both disappear." I swallowed hard, the weight of the situation settling over me. This wasn't just about exposing my brother anymore. This was a full-blown war, and we were on the losing side. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when I finally had the chance to turn the tables. "We need leverage," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small USB drive. "I hacked into your brother's law firm," he said. "The files on here? They're enough to put him away for life, if we play it right." I took the drive, turning it over in my palm. This little piece of plastic held years of secrets, dark dealings, and undeniable proof of my brother's crimes. But going to the authorities now wouldn't work. He had connections. He would see it coming. No, we had to be smart. We had to make him panic. A plan started forming in my mind. Dangerous, risky, but our best shot. It was time to trap the golden boy in his own lies. And this time, I wasn't playing by his rules. I knew there was no turning back. My brother had spent his entire life untouchable, hidden behind a carefully crafted image of success, power, and charm. But now, I had the proof to tear it all down. The only question was, would I make it out alive? I arranged the meeting in a high-end restaurant downtown, the kind of place he frequented, surrounded by the elite who admired and feared him. He walked in, confident as ever, dressed in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes met mine, there was something different. He knew. "Little brother," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I was wondering when you'd stop running around and just come to me." I clenched my fists under the table, keeping my expression neutral. "I thought it was time we talked. You know, about family." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Family? You mean the family you've been trying to destroy?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I have everything, Jason. Every deal, every transaction, every dirty secret you thought would stay buried." I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. One press of a button, and the world sees the real you. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes darkened. "And what exactly do you want?" I hesitated. This was the moment. The moment I could bring him down, make him pay for everything. But before I could speak, he leaned in, his voice like ice. "You think you're in control?" he whispered. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." My blood ran cold. He reached into his jacket pocket, and for a split second, I thought he was going for a weapon. But instead, he pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Inside were photos of the investigator, bound and bloodied. A note was clipped to the front. "Stay out of it. This is your only warning." My hands trembled as I looked back up at him. "You," he sighed, shaking his head. You should have just stayed the failure, little brother. I felt a surge of rage, my heart pounding. I had underestimated him. He was always 10 steps ahead. But I wasn't done yet. I met his gaze, my voice steady. You made a mistake, Jason. You should have killed me when you had the chance. His smirk faltered. And that's when I knew. I still had a shot. I left the restaurant with my mind spinning. My brother was more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The investigator was in his hands, maybe already dead. And now I was next. He had given me a warning, but I knew it wasn't mercy. It was a challenge. A message. Run if you want, but you'll never be free. I had two options, disappear or fight back. And I wasn't about to disappear. As I walked toward my car, I felt eyes on me. I wasn't alone. My instincts screamed at me to move. I quickened my pace, reaching into my jacket for the small knife I carried, just in case. The moment I unlocked my car, a van screeched to a halt behind me. Doors flew open. Two men in dark suits rushed toward me. I barely had time to react. One grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back. The other reached for my throat. I drove my elbow into his ribs, kicking back against the first guy's knee. He grunted in pain but didn't let go. The second man recovered, swinging a fist. I dodged, barely, but the impact sent me stumbling into the side of my car. I was outnumbered, outmatched, but I had one advantage. They weren't expecting a fight. I jabbed my knife into the first man's thigh, making him howl in pain. Blood seeped through his suit as he collapsed. The second guy hesitated, just long enough for me to grab the gun from his belt. I didn't think, I just acted. A single shot rang out. He crumpled to the ground. I didn't check if he was dead. I jumped into my car, tires screeching as I sped away. My hands shook against the wheel. My brother had sent men to take me. This was no longer a game of threats. This was war. I needed to disappear, but not for long. I had a plan, a final move. Jason thought he controlled everything. But what he didn't know was that I had already sent copies of the evidence to a journalist, a trusted contact, and a government official. If anything happened to me, the world would know. But I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to destroy him. I checked my phone. One unread message from an unknown number. You're running out of time. I grinned. So was he. I spent the next 24 hours preparing. Every detail of my brother's empire, every dirty deal, every crime. I had it all. I wasn't just exposing him. I was setting fire to everything he built. First, I sent the files. The news would break within hours. His name would be all over the media, his empire collapsing before his eyes. Second, I made sure the authorities knew where to find him. They wouldn't hesitate. And third, I needed to see him one last time. I found him in his office, standing by the window, watching the city like he still owned it. He turned as I walked in, his expression unreadable. You always were a disappointment, he said. I should have gotten rid of you sooner. I stepped closer, unafraid. Too late for that. His phone rang. He glanced at it, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Fear. I smirked. That'll be the FBI. Jason moved fast, reaching for the gun in his drawer. But I was faster. I lunged, slamming his wrist against the desk, forcing the gun from his grip. It clattered to the floor. For the first time in my life, I had the upper hand. You can't stop this, I said. It's already done. Sirens blared outside. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. Jason's face twisted with rage, his world crumbling around him. The door burst open. Agents swarmed in, guns drawn. Jason Carter, you're under arrest. He turned to me, hatred burning in his eyes. You think this is over? I smiled. No, but you are. As they dragged him away, I took one last look at the man who had overshadowed my entire life. The golden boy, the untouchable one, now just another criminal in cuffs. And for the first time, I was free.